Do you think Mark Cerny is kicking himself with the AMD choice and having to fix the image quality themselves? How will AMD compete in the next generation? Well, I think this is an interesting question because of the way that it's framed, because we know that AMD has their own image solution, or possibly their own image solution with their little project that they showed us, or that we got showed ourselves, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So they have their own solution. It seems like Sony has their own solution. But do you think that Mark Cerny is kicking himself, Alex?
I feel like the graphics industry is kicking themselves because, and so we talked with other journalists, a bunch, like 50 people, like independently. We were talking with everyone. We were just meeting everyone, and I was talking to a ton of people, so many people.
Lots of people coming up for pictures, saying hi.
It was very cool. It was really nice. But like the general sentiment is when you looked around those demo booths that we were walking around, and also the Jensen Huang presentation, like it was just so overwhelming with the depth and breadth and width and detail and the amount of software features in general, and the advancement of them and the rapidity of the advancement, that it was ridiculously overwhelming. Nothing like I've ever seen before. And Nvidia feels 5 years ahead of everyone else at this point. AMD is potentially going to be getting their ML upscaler at some point in the nearest future if this research project ends up being it. But then they have to get to real ray reconstruction added in games. They have to get to ML frame gen. They have to get to multi-frame gen. They have to show off neural materials. They have to show off equivalent of mega geometry in a real setting, running at real time, being accelerated. They have to show off, oh my God, like I can keep going on with this list of things where it's like the software package of NVIDIA is just making this seem ridiculous on a lot of ways. I don't know what to say about it. It's weird.
It's a tricky thing, and I've been thinking about this quite a lot, and especially in the wake of the Blackwell announcement. It's like NVIDIA is like its own platform where they're doing all these like really intense, crazy things.
Oh my gosh.
That you don't see on the competition, or if you do see it on the competition, it takes years. Like we had DLSS 2 in 2019?
DLSS 2 was like the beginning of 2020, I think.
2020, okay.
Or maybe it was at the end of 2019 with that one title. It's like space title. It's like something the moon. What's it called?
Deliver Us the Moon?
Yeah, I think it was Deliver Us the Moon was the first title.
Yeah, and then some. We're looking at 5 years later. We're looking at possibly the implementation of a similar machine learning-based upscaler, although a very high-quality one, apparently, at least
from our first impression.
Our very first impression with our finest off-screen footage available. Certainly, it does seem like NVIDIA is kind of a platform unto themselves, and it's built on Windows, but it's almost as much NVIDIA's as it is Microsoft's at this point. And then you have, your other PC vendors who are doing their own things. Then you have the consoles that are doing their own things. Then you have the Switch 2, which is sort of an interesting little box. I wonder exactly which bucket it will fall closer to. I suspect because of how low power the hardware is, it probably will not be approaching the heights of some of that NVIDIA hardware, but obviously it is NVIDIA powered. But I mean, is Mark kicking himself? I don't think so. I don't think so, because you know what? PlayStation is a huge brand, and they went with AMD for the PS4. I think that was the correct decision at the time. I think it was a decision that made a lot of sense because they could get a high-performance SoC with a nice big GPU, Pitcairn. A Pitcairn rivaling GPU in that system. Netbook class, but still like decent enough for console purposes CPU. And for PS5, they were able to extend that generational lead that they had in PS4 with a design that had very, very good backwards compatibility. And that's continued with PS5 Pro. Those are elements that other vendors probably could not guarantee or could not produce, flat out could not produce. And that's extremely important for Sony. I think the question for Microsoft is a little bit more interesting because they are not as wedded possibly to that AMD box because, they've not done terribly well. Their fortunes are not possibly as wedded to the past as it would be into the future. So I guess it'll be interesting to see what Microsoft's next approach takes, if it will be more of an AMD approach, if it will be more of a cross-vendor approach. who knows? They're dealing with different kinds of priorities there.